distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Global Parent-Child Research Center, GPCRC, and Bremen Hill Nursery School, I extend a warm welcome to all of you this evening. The first in our distinguished speaker series, our topic is Raising Bilingualism, Bilingual Children, a dialogue between a linguist and a psychologist on the advantages of early bilingualism. We are delighted to have with us this evening Professor Ellen Bialystok, Distinguished Research Professor of Psychology from York University, and Professor Maria Polinsky, Professor of Linguistics from Harvard University. We're all very interested to hear their dialogue, and I'm sure we will leave here tonight being enlightened by their knowledge and expertise. Increasingly, knowledge of 2 or more languages in early childhood is considered a valuable asset of global citizens and leaders of tomorrow. A global citizen must have the ability to communicate and connect with people in different languages and across different cultures. Nurturing bilingualism from early childhood onwards and sustaining it across the lifespan is an important step realizing this goal. Tomorrow's leader will be multilinguals with a global vision. Tonight, we will learn more about how we as parents and educators support our children toward this goal. The Distinguished Speaker Series is a collaboration between 4 organizations, including GPCRC, Bremen Hill Nursery School, Childhood Bilingualism Research Center at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and the Key State Laboratory of Brain and Cognitive at the University of Hong Kong. As Director of Global Parent-Child Resource Center, and those of you who are not familiar with us, I'd like to briefly explain the center's purpose. The GPCRC was established to assist the growing needs of Hong Kong parents, to provide the support of families through parent-child programs, and to share information based on worldwide research. GPCRC also works in partnership with Bremen Hill Nursery School, acting as a conduit for information relating to child development and offering professional, practical advice for parents through workshops and events like tonight. We do hope you will enjoy this evening, and we will have an opportunity for questions and answers at the end of the evening. Please write your questions down on the paper provided on your table, and the waiter will collect it after the main course. In recognizing your support this evening, we will be distributing your personalized certificates during desserts. Finally, thank you for coming, and we hope you enjoy the evening. Professor Virginia Yip from Chinese University of Hong Kong and Professor Stephen Matthews from Hong Kong University will commence the proceedings shortly. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, we now have the honor of introducing our distinguished speakers for this evening's talk. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Ellen Bialystok. We are very honored to have her here to inaugurate the Distinguished Speakers Lecture Series. Appropriately enough, Ellen Bialystok is a distinguished research professor of psychology at York University and associate scientist at the Rodman Research Institute of the Baycrest Center for Geriatric Care. A fellow of the Royal Society of Canada, she's one of the most influential and authoritative scholars whose work has impacted bilingualism, language acquisition, cognitive neuroscience, and developmental psycholinguistics. She received her PhD from the University of Toronto, studying the relation between children's conceptual and linguistic development. She then turned to the problem of second language acquisition and investigated the process by which children and adults acquire additional languages. The model she developed in this research showing how interactions between specific linguistic systems, and generalized knowledge systems were required to learn a second language. This formed the basis of her research, examining metalinguistic awareness and literacy acquisition in young children. Much of her research in the past 20 years has focused on the effect of bilingualism on children's language and cognitive development, showing accelerated mastery of specific cognitive processes for bilingual children. More recently, this research has been extended to investigations of adult processing and cognitive aging, showing the continuity of these bilingual advantages into adulthood and the protection against cognitive decline in healthy aging for bilingual older adults. Her award-winning research demonstrates convincingly that bilingualism has lifelong benefits. She is the author and editor of over 100 scientific papers and 7 books, including, in other words, The Psychology and Science of Second Language Acquisition, Bilingualism in Development, Language Literacy and Cognition, and Language Processing in Bilingual Children. These books are widely used in undergraduate and postgrad courses in bilingualism and second language acquisition, and I use them in my own courses at Chinese University of Hong Kong. Ellen is the recipient of many prestigious awards. Her awards include a Killam Research Fellowship, Walter Gordon Research Fellowship, Dean's Award for Outstanding Research, the Donald Stutz Award for Research Excellence, and York University's Research Award of Merit. And we're very happy to have Ellen here with us today, this evening.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Stephen Matthews, and on behalf of Professor Tan and the State Key Laboratory for Brain and Cognitive Sciences at the University of Hong Kong, it's my pleasure to introduce our second distinguished speaker, Professor Maria Polinsky. She's Professor of Linguistics at Harvard University. She received her PhD in linguistics at the Soviet Academy of Sciences in Moscow and later taught at the University of Southern California, where I had the privilege of working with her, and the University of California at San Diego, where she was chairperson of the Department of Linguistics. She served on the expert panel of linguistics for the U.S. National Science Foundation, and she's an executive committee member of the Linguistic Society of America. She's the author of over 100 journal articles, 2 books, and editor of 4 other books, including the Atlas of Languages, on which we collaborated and which has appeared in at least 7 languages at last count. Professor Polinsky is a linguist with unusually broad interests, ranging from comparative grammar to language change and heritage languages. She has worked on an equally wide range of languages, including languages of the Caucasus, Austronesian languages, and Bantu languages in Africa. She can actually speak a number of these languages too. For example, I've heard her introduce a speaker in fluent Malagasy, the Austronesian language of Madagascar. And in case you're wondering where that is, I'm sure your children have seen the movie, Madagascar. In her current work, she's focusing on experimental approaches to linguistic theories, and in her language processing lab at Harvard, she uses state-of-the-art methods to study the processing of diverse languages, increasingly including Chinese. An area of work which she discussed at our workshop yesterday involves heritage language learning, the kind of incomplete language acquisition which occurs when children switch from a language of their heritage to a dominant language of their society without fully mastering the heritage language. Her research on such heritage languages has included Russian, Korean, Spanish, Chinese, and Tongan. As a leader in this fast-growing field, she directs the annual Heritage Language Summer Institutes funded by the United States Department of Education. These institutes bring together researchers and teachers concerned with language development in heritage languages. This year's institute in Hawaii will focus on Asian languages, including Chinese. We're delighted to have her here, and especially delighted to have her turn our attention to our languages and to this part of the world. Welcome, Maria.
Good evening, and thank you very much for those lovely introductions. I want to start by thanking the hosts who invited us. This has been a really remarkable set of events that we've been fortunate to participate in. This morning, we had the great privilege of visiting the Braemar Hill Nursery School, which was an amazing experience. I've seen a lot of schools in my life. This was really an outstanding example. We feel very grateful for you taking us there. And to everyone else who has been so kind and generous with their time, it's been a really wonderful experience, and I thank you for that. What's going to happen is that each of us is going to give you a very little presentation on what we do, and then we may have some time to interact. But I'm particularly looking forward to the exchange after dinner, where we get to respond to your questions and your ideas and engage a little more in the kinds of issues that are on your minds. I look forward to that a lot. I'm going to show you a snapshot of the research I do. It has to do, the piece that I've chosen to show you will be about what happens when children are raised with two languages. So I want to start by asking, why would anybody bother learning two languages? It's hard. Why would you do this? So here's one answer. So that's one reason. Recently, this ad appeared in The Guardian in Britain. Does your child have the bilingual advantage? Now, I know you can't read that little print, so I've expanded the first paragraph. Children who speak a second language have a proven advantage in school and in life. It's the bilingual advantage. And if you have a child, you know there's a product coming, right? This is a commercial. And if you have a child aged 1 to 12, you want to make certain you give it to them right now. Here's why. And then it goes on with these claims. Study after study shows that kids who learn a second language achieve higher scores, better marks, higher IQ, and so on and so on. Now, this company phoned me around this time and asked if they could use my name in these ads. I said no. I didn't know who they were, and I didn't know why they wanted to use it. You'll notice they got BBC to agree. But these are pretty extraordinary claims. Now, I study these issues. I study bilingualism and its effect on children's development, and I want it to be that good. But one has to be careful. I'm a scientist. I want to make sure that what I say can be supported and confirmed by research. But this marketing has, the astounding thing to me was that this marketing made it sound like the issue is solved. I might as well just pack up my lab and go home. Apparently, children who speak another language have a proven advantage in life. So what I'm going to do now is show you little snapshots of the kinds of work that I do and hope that we can together evaluate these claims, come to something a little more rational, and hopefully you won't go out and buy this product on the basis of their ads. You may want to buy the product on the basis of your decisions, but not on the basis of their ads. It's interesting that when I said I would not endorse it, they say study after study and don't say anything about which study or who studies. Okay, so let's start at the beginning. We use this word a lot. What is bilingualism? And the very complicated thing about doing this kind of research is that bilingualism changes. There's many reasons people become bilingual. You immigrate to a new country, there's extended family who speaks another language, you're sent to a school where the language of instruction is different, you move briefly. These are just a few reasons that people become bilingual. Now, the important thing is they're not the same. Every one of these, and the many more I didn't list, is a different kind of experience and will have different outcomes. Here are some of the reasons, some of the important things that are different. Bilingualism may or may not include education and literacy in both languages. You may or may not be very proficient in the second language. You may only speak it in certain contexts or to certain limited degrees. The language may or may not have community support or community value. Some languages are just not highly valued, and that's an important factor, and so on. So bilingualism is not one thing. And I'd like you to keep that in mind as I give you this demonstration. I'm going to be talking mostly about the case where children live in Toronto, where I live, where everybody speaks English, but these children don't speak English at home. So they're bilingual because when they're at school and at soccer practice and with their friends, they speak English, and when they come home, they speak Cantonese or Portuguese or Italian or one of 60 or 70 other languages. That's the kind of bilingualism I'm talking about. Now, here's a couple of points about learning language if there's two languages in the home or two languages that you have to learn. First, it's quite normal that children faced with the task of learning two languages are slower to get started and know fewer words in each language. It's perfectly normal and it's perfectly understandable. They only have so much time. Children have the expanding minds of 2, 3, 4-year-olds is soaking in the whole world as it's growing in its capacity, but it isn't quite up to taking in two full languages. So there are delays in vocabulary and often slower starts. And that's normal, and you need to understand that it's okay. Bilingual children probably, this is not confirmed, but I think the evidence is really moving towards suggesting that they go about the task of learning language in a different way. They use different kinds of strategies. They pay attention to different kinds of things. So it's not the same. However, even though they may know fewer words in each language and they're learning them in a different way, their ability to use language for communication is absolutely fine. It's equivalent and in every way equal to a monolingual child. But other things might be better. Metalinguistic ability, the very important ability to understand what language means, to understand that language is a system that has structure, develops earlier in bilingual children. And as all parents worry about, they learn to read just fine in both languages. Now, if their two languages use different writing systems like English and Chinese, they learn both of them. And they don't learn any one of them to their detriment. But if their two languages use the same writing system, like English and French or English and Spanish, in fact, they have an advantage. They learn reading faster, more efficiently. So there's no disadvantages, there's some differences, and there are some advantages. Now I'm going to give you some examples here of what I mean by the metalinguistic and basic skills that children need to learn that bilingual children are figuring out earlier. Here's a little task that we used some time ago to understand how children learn this really difficult idea about the relationship between sounds and symbols. So you're going to all do this for me, okay? Here's the rule. When you see that picture, you say night. When you see that picture, you say day. All right, you ready? You're going to do this out loud, all right? Okay, it's not as easy as you expect, and you can make it even harder by using different kinds of materials. So we give this to little children who are about 4 years old. So you have to understand the relationship between how we call things, which is just a symbol, and what they really mean. It's a hard and very important ability. Here are the results. The red bar, this is the number of correct. The red bar is monolingual children. And these are two kinds of bilinguals. One group who've been bilingual from birth, and one group who learned a second language a little later. These kids are all 4 years old. Bilinguals are better. No problem. You want me to call it something else? I'll call it something else. It's easy. Here's a second example. Why is learning to read so hard? One of the really basic, difficult problems in learning to read is in figuring out and accepting the fact that the squiggles on the page are the language. I mean, it's really incredible. They know how to speak, they know how to understand. They've seen storybooks. Their storybooks have pictures and squiggles. But where does the story come from? The insight that the story comes from the squiggles, and it comes from those squiggles in a very systematic way, there's rules about it, is a great breakthrough. And as soon as they get that, they're reading. So here's a task. We take children who are 4 years old in most of these studies. All of these children can identify letters. In the case where we're using Chinese-English bilinguals, they identify some very, very simple characters, some numbers or something. So these are not strange shapes to them. They can all write their own names, so they know something about print, but none of them are able to read. So these kids are in this little window just before reading happens, okay? And we give them this task. So we say, I have two pictures here. Here's a picture of a dog, and we talk about it. And here's a picture of a tree, and we talk about it. And that's the last time we mention the pictures. Then we take out a card. Now remember, these kids cannot read. And we say, I have a card here. And the card has the word dog on it. I'm going to put the card right here. Can you tell me what the card says? Thank you. But then some terrible thing happens. This bunny rabbit whooshes across and moves the dog and says, naughty bunny, I told you to sit still. Please go away and sit quietly. Now, what were we talking about? Oh, right, we were talking about the card. I'm sorry, I forgot. Can you tell me what the card says? You're not sure. You're not sure what kids are going to say. Okay. But then we say, before the bunny came, I had put the card in a different place, and I'm going to put it back here. And now we ask the child for the third time, what does the card say? So the child answers the same question 3 times. The important question is what they say when the card is under the wrong picture. Because at that point there's a conflict. If they think the story comes from the pictures, they will look at this conflict and say tree. Because they have not yet accepted this sound symbol correspondence. They're not ready to read. You have to believe that print is sacred. So what we're going to look at is how many children get this question right. Okay? Everybody gets this question right. How many children get this question right? Because there's conflict. And here's the data. These are monolingual children, and here are 3 kinds of bilingual children: French, Chinese, and Hebrew English bilingual children. And in all cases, they have figured out this important principle of metalinguistic relationships earlier. So one final thing to ask then is, what about reading? If they're figuring this out earlier, does this help them to read? So this is the results from a study where we give different kinds of bilingual children and monolingual children a simple reading task in English. And all of these bilingual children are learning to read in both languages. So this is how many answers they get correct on the English reading task. In red, we have monolingual English children. And these 2 sort of turquoise and green bars are Hebrew and Spanish bilingual children. And in between are Chinese English bilingual children. Now, what's important